Okay, by popular demand, the second interview.
Is this
So,
is this one going to work?
well, we'll find out.
All right.
We will find out. We'll get to it. I don't have any viewers yet, but hopefully they'll start showing up. So, for beginners, you can tell us, based on Mike Deitchman's request, all about your childhood on the East Coast.
No childhood on the East Coast.
So, where did you grow up and how did you get started playing?
Grew up in Fairview, Oregon, on a kind of a farm with cows and trout and stuff like that. Um, got started in college. The shortstop on my college baseball team. College baseball team took us to the pool room one night, and I played pool for the first time and fell in love with it. And eventually got a job at the pool room called Billiards and Bagels. I worked there for about 3 months and bought my first cue, and the rest is history.
Uh-huh. So, how often. Okay, well, how much did you practice when you started? How long did you put in really long practice hours? And then how often do you practice now?
When I got hooked, I would go to the pool room and I would get in at about 11 o'clock. Didn't open till like noon or 1. The owner let me in at Billiards and Bagels, Jim Oswald, and I would practice by myself with books and chalk and imagination and everything for probably 6, 7 hours. Um, and then when everybody else got off work, I would challenge people and play for money and all that kind of stuff. So I was practicing 10, 12 hours a day for about a year. And then after that, I cut it down to, maybe 5 or 6 for the next couple of years. So,
And then how often do you practice now?
um, very little. I will practice before I go to events. I will go and play some of the local bar tournaments for maybe a week or 2 weeks ahead of time, and then I'll get a few hours in on the table, but not much.
And Darrell Smith asks, when practicing, do you prefer drills or games or something else?
Um, Back when I practiced every day, all day, there were really no quote unquote drills. Because I teach a lot, I don't believe in drills. I believe in setting up situations, practicing your weaknesses, um, that type of thing. So drills are really not a big part of what I've ever done.
Yeah. Bryce asked, he said some players are more about fundamentals and some play more based on feel. How would you describe your game?
Um, at the upper level, there's got to be a lot of feel. You're going to have some players that are more fundamentally sound, but I'm more of a technical player rather than a kind of a footloose and type of player. So a little tighter, a little more cue ball control, and rather than letting the cue ball fly and going for it type of thing.
Jacqueline asks, how did you balance league tournaments with a business, 4 kids, etc.? What's the secret to making it all work?
Well, in 1990, when my first son was born, it changes your whole life. Um, so between marriage, 2 boys by marriage, and then 2 girls with you, raising 4 kids and jobs, Um, I learned to not have to practice before I go to events, and so I don't need to spend a month practicing, getting ready for an event at any level. It's hard. A lot of people can't do that. I know Glenn Atwell couldn't do it. He had to practice every day, all day. So I'm kind of lucky that way.
What do you base that on? Not having to practice?
Um, Not having to practice, I've spent so much time practicing that you don't forget it. So I think it's basically being mentally stronger. I don't think I need to practice and do something I've done a billion times. So it seems to work, at least for me. So,
Um, Annalena asked if you still do lessons and why do you think lessons are important?
I still teach a lot. Um, Not as much as I used to. Um, but the reason they're important is um, to be able to extract the information from pros and Hall of Famers, or myself, or anybody that has already been through it. If somebody can skip that trial and error process and extract that information through lessons, as well as I've taught a lot of students who uh, they just don't know what they're doing wrong and they can't figure it out, and they end up flatlining, and all I have to do is teach them cue ball control and diamond systems and all the different stuff, and then their game can start to take off again. So lessons are really important at any level.
So Pat asked, when you're staring off into space or looking away for a few seconds, what is that about?
It means I'm kind of crazy. Um, I started doing that about 20 years ago, um, and there's some good books out there and things, but I read The Inner Game of Tennis, and it talks about self one, self two, trusting yourself, but basically the looking off at ceilings or stuff away from the pool table, I will do that when I've got a tough shot. Um, or maybe after a tough shot, and even if I've got an easy one, I use it as a mechanism to refocus and get my concentration centered. And people think I'm crazy. I've had people ask me about it. Ivan Doty thought I was nuts one time, but it works for me, and I recommend it for anybody to stay centered,
Sure.
basically.
So Darren asked what you think the grunting does for you.
Um, I started doing that many years ago when I started gambling with Jay Reed. Um, it is similar to the concentration, only it's me telling myself to stay focused and try harder. It's a little more of a let's get in there and fight no matter what it takes. So I've never played another player that grunts. I don't do it a lot, but I will do it gambling, and I will do it in competition sometimes, and it's just me. So it's kind of silly.
Um, Marquez Paul asked, who did you or do you look up to?
um, when I first started, I wanted to just play better players. I wanted to beat the best there was around. Uh, and in billiards and bagels, it was John Morbido, and it took me a year before I could beat him in a race to 11. And so back then, John was a great 9-ball player, um, one of the best this state's seen. Um, and then probably after that, the next in the area was Glenn Atwell. And I used to love to play in tournaments that he was at, and Glenn was tough. So, I mean, that's the only way you're going to get the best out of your game and see where you're at, is to play the best. So I've always done that.
Paul also asked, why pool?
Why pool? Just because my love of it once I played it, and growing up through high school and everything else, I played all the sports, and they were all team sports. And some of the sports, if the coach doesn't like you, or he doesn't like tall people, short people, whatever the reason, they don't. Sometimes you don't get the right shot. And if it wouldn't have been pool, I would have played probably professional baseball. Whether I would have made the majors or not, who knows? I definitely could have gone through the minor league system. But at the same time, I fell in love with pool, and I got good real quick. So I like the individual sport. So that type of deal.
So the anonymous questions were, there's a fine line between competence and arrogance. Where do you draw that line?
You know, confidence and arrogance, anybody who competes has to have confidence. The people that use the word arrogance a lot of times don't know that person. So it's kind of a crummy word to use, especially if you don't know somebody. And I've dealt with that word throughout my career playing pool. And it will come from people who have never even talked to me. So they don't know what is in my heart and how much I give, how much family, and I just think it's a word that gets abused. So
you think that people who have the perception of you specifically being arrogant are really seeing something else in your personality?
They're seeing just the competitiveness at the table, and if you're pumping yourself up and trying to beat somebody that's better than you, or a world beater or whatever, if you don't have confidence, you're going to get your butt kicked. And so I think that arrogance and confidence, or having swagger, or whatever you want to call it, it's misconstrued. So it really is.
Then what about away from the table?
In what way?
Do you think that you're unapproachable, or that you intimidate people from talking to you, or
You're funny. I'm a little more quiet. Um, you know, a little shy. I've always been that way. I haven't been a big public speaker, and I get nervous. But after playing pool as long as I have, it doesn't matter whether it's streamed or whether there's 500 people playing. I've done it so much, and against either pros or top level players, that I don't get nervous. So, yeah.
So another person asked, based on your skills today, do you consider yourself a pro?
No, I consider a pro somebody who is doing it for a living. And I've raised kids, family, businesses, the whole 9 yards. When I first started, I thought I wanted to be a pro, and I realized that people that were ranked in the top 15 or 20 in the world were absolutely broke. And I was getting to where I was beating some of them, and I really did not want to be them. So I realized that I wanted to start a family, come back from California, get married, start a family, and I can play pool anytime. So no, not a professional, just a high-level regional player, and at any time I can give a pro a real hard time and have.
Yeah.
So, and it's a lot of fun.
The last question was, do you want to see the Fargo rating implemented in Western BCA? Why or why not?
I do want to see it implemented. It seems to be very accurate. And I think it will alleviate some sandbagging that's done deliberately. So if you want to go to Chinook Winds or any event and everything else and sandbag and not cash, then your Fargo rating will dump appropriately. So I think in the long run it'll be great. It's going to take a while to get the kinks out and get enough people with real numbers. So at the start it's going to be a little wacky, but in the long run I think it'll be great.
All right. Anything else to add?
No, you didn't have any questions? Is this it?
Well, I was asking other people's questions because
Oh.
I already know you.
I see.
All right. Well, we can always do another interview if people have more questions.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye.